I thought the worst was over when the floodwaters finally dried up. Man, was I wrong. It was like surviving a hurricane only to get slapped by a tornado of paperwork, arguments, and regrets that hit harder than any storm surge. I'm sitting here now, months later, still shaking my head at how it all went down. Let me take you through it, step by step, like I'm chatting with you over coffee, because this isn't just some story. It's my life, and it could be yours too if you're not careful. Picture this. Our neighborhood, Willow Creek, is one of those picture-perfect suburbs on the outskirts of Houston. Neat rows of two-story homes with manicured lawns, a community pool that's always sparkling, and kids riding bikes without a care. We've got an HOA homeowners association that keeps everything in line. You know the type. They nitpick about fence heights and holiday decorations. But hey, it keeps property values up, right? Or so we thought. My wife, Sarah, and I moved here 5 years ago, chasing that American dream. Good schools for our 2 kids, a backyard for barbecues, the whole 9 yards. Life was steady, predictable, until Hurricane Elena decided to crash the party. It started with the warnings on TV, another storm brewing in the Gulf, but we'd heard it all before. This one's different, the meteorologist said, eyes wide like they meant it. We boarded up windows, stocked up on batteries and canned goods, and hunkered down. The rain came first, relentless, pounding like 1,000 drums. Then the winds howled, ripping shingles off roofs and toppling trees. But the real killer was the water. It rose slow at first, creeping up driveways, then surged like a beast unleashed. By nightfall, our street was a river. Cars floated away, basements filled to the brim. Sarah and I grabbed the kids and evacuated to a hotel, hearts pounding as we watched the news footage of our home vanishing under murky brown waves. When we returned 3 days later, the water had receded, leaving behind a slimy mess of mud, debris, and that god-awful stench of mildew and rot. Our house, flooded up to the knees. Furniture ruined, photo albums swollen and illegible, the kids' toys scattered like battlefield casualties. But we were alive, and the structure stood. Neighbors hugged in the streets, sharing stories of close calls. We made it, everyone said, slapping backs and forcing smiles. The sun even peeked out, like a promise that things would get better. I remember thinking, okay, the worst is over. Now we rebuild. Little did I know, the real disaster was just gearing up, the one involving people, power, and a whole lot of bad choices. Enter the HOA. Ours is run by a board of 5 volunteers, elected folks who think they're mini-mayors. There's President Harold, a retired accountant with a clipboard always at the ready, Vice President Linda, the neighborhood gossip queen, and a few others who showed up to meetings maybe twice a year. In theory, they're there to help in crises like this. They'd send out emails before the storm about sandbags and evacuation routes, which was fine. But post-flood, that's when the cracks showed. The first emergency meeting was called a week after the waters dropped. We all crammed into the community center, which miraculously stayed dry. Harold stood at the front, looking official in his polo shirt. "Folks, we've got insurance claims to file, contractors to hire, and assessments to make," he announced. "The HOA has a disaster fund, about $50,000 saved up from dues. We'll use it wisely." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Sarah squeezed my hand. It felt like we had a plan. They divided tasks. Linda would coordinate with FEMA. Someone else would scout bulk deals on drywall. I volunteered to help with debris removal, figuring we'd all pitch in. But things started unraveling fast. First off, communication was a joke. Emails trickled out sporadically, full of jargon like covenant amendments and special assessments. Half the neighborhood didn't even get them because the server crashed from overload. People like old Mrs. Jenkins, who doesn't do email, were left in the dark. She'd call the board, but no one picked up. "They're too busy arguing among themselves," her son told me later. Then came the inspections. The HOA insisted on approving all repairs to maintain community standards. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. They rejected my neighbor Tom's plan to elevate his foundation because it altered the aesthetic uniformity. Tom had lost everything. His wife was in tears, their savings drained, and now he couldn't even start fixing his home. He stormed into the next meeting, red-faced. "This is bullshit, Harold. My house is molding, and you're worried about looks?" Harold just adjusted his glasses. "Rules are rules, Tom. We vote on exceptions. That's when the frustration hit like a tidal wave. It wasn't just delays, it was the petty power plays. Linda, it turned out, had a grudge against the Ramirez family because their dog barked too much pre-flood. Suddenly, their insurance claim got flagged for review, holding up funds while everyone else moved forward. Whispers spread. Was she sabotaging them? I confronted her after a meeting, trying to stay calm. Linda, come on, this isn't the time for old beefs. She smiled that fake smile. Oh, honey, it's all procedure. Nothing personal. But it felt personal. Sarah and I were knee-deep in our own battles. Our claim for new flooring was denied because the HOA said we hadn't gotten pre-approval, never mind that the office was underwater at the time. We appealed, but the board dragged their feet. Weeks turned into months. Mold crept up the walls, black and insidious, making the kids cough at night. We dipped into our emergency savings, hiring a contractor out of pocket, but then the HOA slapped us with a fine for unauthorized modifications. A fine. In the middle of a disaster zone. The community chat exploded. What started as a helpful group for sharing resources turned into a war zone. Accusations flew. The board's hoarding the fund. Harold's pocketing kickbacks from his buddy's construction firm. I tried to mediate, posting, "Let's focus on solutions, guys." But deep down, I was fuming too. One night, Sarah broke down in the kitchen. "If only we'd chosen a different neighborhood," she sobbed. "This HOA is killing us slower than the flood." And that's when the if-onlys started haunting me. Looking back, there were so many red flags we ignored. If only we'd pushed for better emergency protocols at those boring annual meetings. The HOA had talked about flood insurance for common areas, but they cheaped out, voting it down to keep dues low. Not necessary, Harold had said. Now, the playground was a swamp, unusable, and the fund barely covered basics. Worse, there was the decision about external aid. A local charity offered free cleanup crews, but the board turned them down. Why? Liability issues, Linda claimed. But I overheard her telling a friend it was because the volunteers weren't vetted and might lower the neighborhood's image. Image? Our homes were gutted. If only we'd rallied the residents sooner, demanded a vote. Instead, we let the board steamroll us, and now families were suffering. The high point, a low point, depending on how you see it, came at the special assessment meeting 3 months in. Harold dropped the bomb. To cover repairs on shared roads and the clubhouse, each household owed an extra $2,000. The room erupted. "Where's the transparency?" yelled Maria from down the street. "Show us the books," Harold stammered, promising audits, but it was too late. Tom stood up, veins bulging. "I've had it. You're all incompetent or worse, corrupt." Fists clenched, he lunged toward the podium. I jumped in, pulling him back, but the damage was done. Police were called. The meeting dissolved into chaos. That night, secrets spilled. An anonymous email circulated with leaked financials. Turns out, the disaster fund had been dipped into pre-flood for beautification projects, new flowers for the entrance, fancy signs. Not a dime for sandbags or pumps. And Harold? His son owned a stake in the insurance broker they recommended. Conflict of interest? You bet. The neighborhood split. Half demanded resignations. The other half defended the board, saying they were doing their best under pressure. Sarah and I were caught in the middle. We hosted an impromptu gathering at our half-repaired house. Neighbors crammed on folding chairs amid drywall dust. "We need to sue," Tom insisted. "Or at least vote them out." But Linda's allies showed up, accusing us of stirring trouble. "Unity is key," one said. Unity? It felt like civil war. Arguments escalated, shouting matches over coffee, doors slammed in faces. Friendships fractured. Our kids asked why everyone was mad. How do you explain adult pettiness to a 7-year-old? The climax hit when FEMA finally arrived for inspections. We thought it was salvation, but the HOA meddled again. They submitted a unified claim for the community, lumping everything together to streamline. Result? Delays for individuals while they haggled over allocations. My claim got shortchanged because the board prioritized the pool house deemed essential for morale. Morale? Our living room was still bare concrete. I lost it at the next board call-in. "This is criminal. You're playing favorites." Harold hung up on me. If only I'd recorded that call. Or pushed harder for independent assessments. The regrets piled up like the debris we were still clearing. What if we'd formed a rival committee? What if the board had listened instead of clinging to power? These if-onlys kept me up at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying scenarios where things turned out different. But amid the mess, we learned hard lessons. HOAs aren't evil by nature, but without accountability, they become tyrants. We started a petition for reforms, term limits for board members, mandatory transparency reports, disaster prep funds ring-fenced. It gained traction. Over half the neighborhood signed. Slowly, things shifted. Harold resigned under pressure, citing health reasons. Linda followed, mumbling about family time. New blood came in, folks like me who knew the pain firsthand. Broader picture? This isn't just our story. Across America, HOAs control millions of homes, wielding power with little oversight. Disasters expose the flaws. Rigid rules clash with real needs. Egos trump empathy. If you're in one, get involved early. Read the bylaws, attend meetings, build alliances. And for God's sake, push for emergency plans that actually work. Looking back, the flood took our stuff, but the HOA drama stole our peace. It turned neighbors into enemies, tested marriages, and left scars that water couldn't wash away. But it also forged resilience. We're rebuilding not just homes, but community. Stronger, wiser, ready for whatever comes next. Now, I gotta ask, do you think HOAs should have the power to deny repairs after a disaster, even if it means families suffer? Or are they just necessary evils that keep neighborhoods nice? What about board members? Should they face legal consequences for bad decisions, like in a real government? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one. If this story hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more real talk tales that might just save you from your own nightmare. Who's with me on reforming these systems, yeah or nay?